The best ball fantasy football season is alive. Who should you target and who should you avoid? Plus, how did the latest free agency moves affect the fantasy football landscape? All this and more on tonight's In Between Fantasy Football Podcast.
Cause I've been in tune, out of touch, coming off the bench, trying to shake the funk, check your stat line, see who's up, that over under hit too clutch.
I'm trying to avoid getting carried away with the jet sweep, sleeping on a trick play, predicting all of my moves like they seen every play. And so I'm running it back, head down, get out of my way. And it's for the law with only one thing to do. I guess I'll say a prayer and put it all on the line for you. What they don't know, something they haven't seen. I find a gap on the screen and hit them right in between. Yeah, I got it, and I got it. Just one thing to say, yeah, what they don't know, something they haven't seen. I'm off that mean Joe Green, it's got me fading between. Yeah, I got it, and I got it. The In Between Fantasy Football Podcast.
All right. It is March 21st, 2023, baby. Fantasy drafts are rolling as we put the pieces together following NFL free agency. We'll certainly chat all about that. We'll certainly chat about the best ball drafts happening now and how we can take advantage of some of these maneuvering ADPs right now. Seth Woolcock back here with clear eyes and full heart. And I'm joined by a man who is a John Elway aggregator, an Aaron Rodgers media pundit, the one and only Nate Polvote. I'm also joined by our other co-host tonight on this beautiful spring evening, a man who's a fan of the Wu-Tang Clan, Summer Sausage, the Seattle Seahawks. That's our guy out in Seattle, of course, Scott Rainier. Nate, Scott, how are you guys? It's good to see you and be back with the boys tonight.
I'm good, man. Look, you can see it behind me in my window with our spring forward, which I hate. At least it's still light out. That's kind of nice. So we've had some really good weather here in Seattle lately. It's been really nice to get some of that free vitamin D. And like off season, this has been my busiest off season by far in my life, but it's been super fun. The combine and free agency.
Yeah. It's heating up.
So
baby.
Many things to talk about.
Yeah, we've been plugged in. Nate, how are you doing over there in crispy Colorado tonight, my friend?
It wasn't so crispy today. It was nice enough that I was in shorts and a t-shirt, still in a t-shirt. And I'm feeling those spring vibes, man. It's like things are coming alive, and we've got the draft coming up now as I think we're through the meat of free agency at this point.
Yes, sir.
We have some trades coming. Hopefully, DeAndre Hopkins, please go somewhere else. But dude, this is a great time of year, man. I'm just stoked to be here.
I'm stoked to be here with you guys as well. Tonight on the show, we will be doing some headline hijinks, breaking down some of these more positional players and their movement around the NFL. And then we're going to reveal our best ball targets and fades as we approach the season. That's really fun, whether you're playing over on NFC, Underdog, wherever you guys are playing. And then we're going to have a little chat about how to fuck up your spring cleaning, how to make it awesome. And so we're going to talk about all that tonight. I want to welcome in the IBT family, of course. We got Albert in the chat, locked and loaded as always from the get-go. Good evening, IBT. Good evening to you, Albert. We appreciate you joining us tonight. And Didi saying hello, boys. Happy Tuesday. Happy Tuesday to you, Didi. We hope you survived the storms out there in California. I know there was a lot of snow out there, so hope you're doing all right there. I want to remind the IBT family and anyone new to the channel, if you guys want to enroll in our Keyshawn Nixon helmet giveaway, autograph from the man who just got himself a new bag from the Green Bay Packers, head over to our website. We're going to drop that in the chat. And just put in, yes, subscribe to the channel. You don't have to do anything else. We learned our lesson a little bit about trying to make people do too much shit. So just subscribe to the channel and put in that form, and you're going to be good to go. Well, let's get that going. Guys, and let's jump right into it because we are absolutely loaded today. Here we go. Let's get some headline hijinks, baby. All right, headline hijinks, friends. And let's start at the top, I guess. I guess we should probably kick it off with one of the more recent news, and that's Adam Thielen going to the Carolina Panthers on a 3-year, $25 million contract. And my headline is this: I got a Thielen downstairs for Adam in Charlotte, baby. Yes, I am in on Adam Thielen, guys. The Panthers only have 6 picks in this draft. 40th is where they could maybe take a wide receiver if they wanted to, like if a Zay Flowers happened to fall to them, a Josh Downs, someone in that nature I could see. But realistically, I don't think there's anyone out there left on the street or left in this draft that they could get that could bring in and overtake Thielen for this number 1 role, boys. DJ Chark being reported as possibly being interested in the Panthers. But outside of him, it's Terrace Marshall, it's Nate Sky Laviska. How do you guys feel about Adam Thielen? I have a lot more to talk about him, but initially, Nate, what was your takeaways from this this signing here?
Well, he's 32, so there's that. And for a wide receiver, that's a little old. I mean, he's only 9 years younger than me. That concerns me a little. But I thought it was interesting, his quote where he said, "I feel like I have a real chance to win a Super Bowl." At first, I laughed it off. But if you look at what this team's doing, they're actually putting together a decent squad. You know, they got Slime Sanders in, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. I don't love Andy Dalton, but also Andy Dalton's serviceable. And
he's a great grooming the next gen, man.
Well, and the Dalton signing leads me to believe they're going to go after Anthony Richardson. So that could be dynamic for this team. Very Cam Newton-esque type quarterback.
Oh, I'm hoping for Adam Thielen's sake it's CJ Stroud. I think.
Dude, they gave Dalton 2 years, which leads me to believe that he's a bridge for a guy like Anthony Richardson, who's believed to be not completely ready to go in year 1, and maybe he's going to need part of year 2 to kind of sit the Patrick Mahomes treatment. But ultimately for fantasy, I like it because, like you said, he's going to be a target hog in this offense. There's not going to be a ton of passing volume. I think they're going to be pretty run heavy. I think Reich's going to be smart about that part of it. That said, who else is going to get targets? I think Laviska Shenault's the wide receiver 2 in this offense at this point. And from track record, that's not saying a whole lot, as much as I love him.
And I know he is an older wide receiver. Obviously, that is a concern, but I still think he has some juice left in him. He just wasn't schemed up that much in Kevin O'Connell's offense last season with those Minnesota Vikings. Justin Jefferson, of course, KJ Osborne, young and emerging, and eventually they add Hawkinson. So, I think they knew at the beginning of last season, unless we win a Super Bowl, Thielen's probably not coming back. So why would they try to develop him more when they have Osborne and these younger guys? So I get that. But let's not forget, gentlemen, he was still a wide receiver 3 last year in a down season. The 2021 wide receiver 28 in 13 games. And with 10 TDs, 2020, not that long ago, wide receiver 10 overall, 14 touchdowns. And he never saw more than 108 targets in that span. And I think he's going to see 125, 130 targets possibly in this offense, being the number 1 guy. I think productive when healthy. He could be a young quarterback's best friend, and he's wide receiver 71 on Underdog right now. I think he has league-winning upside, Scott, to be a potential wide receiver 2. Do you believe that?
I'm not quite there with him.
You don't got that feeling downstairs, Scott?
I mean, not downstairs. I mean, I agree a little bit with Nate. I think he's actually going to be 33 when the season starts. But, I mean, Carolina, for one, Andy Dalton, sure, we can say he'd be a good bridge quarterback but the last time Andy Dalton came into a team that drafted a young quarterback who wasn't ready to play, it was a dumpster fire, if you remember. And I just think if Adam Thielen was a little bit younger, I would like the forecast on him after 2023. I just think 2023 is going to be a bit of a growing year. I think they are going to run the ball a lot. They ran the ball a lot last year. They're one of the only teams that ran it more than they passed it last year. I don't think that's going to change with either Andy Dalton or a rookie. And I mean, he has had some spike touchdown years, but if you look at his whole career, I mean, he's had more years under 10 touchdowns than over. And I just think I've looked at some of his peripheral advanced stats. I won't go into too much detail, but they've been on the decline for the last 3 years. So, but I mean, at wide receiver 71, I mean,
yes, that's the point.
Willing at that price, but I don't see him. I think too much has to go perfectly right for him to be a top 24 receiver.
Okay. I'm going to take my shot on him a little bit earlier than his ADP right now and hopefully cash in. In other news, though, at the Carolina Panthers, same team, Miles Sanders, 4-year, $25.4 million. Nate, what do you make of it?
It's slime time in Queen City, man. We're looking at a new head coach in Frank Reich, who Jonathan Taylor in his 3 seasons, he averaged 17.47 carries a game. So Sanders is going to have the volume. Here's my issue is that he hasn't been necessarily highly efficient with his carries. He averaged 4.9 yards per carry in that span, but only 3.9 yards per carry last season. That said, Reich knows Miles Sanders. He knows what he's capable of, and he still didn't really use him that much in Philly when he was the offensive coordinator. Now, will that change in Carolina? It's going to have to. They let Deontay Foreman go. They've got Miles Sanders, Chuba Hubbard, Rasheed Blackshear. Hubbard and Blackshear, while they have some upside, Miles Sanders has to be the workhorse in this offense at this point. If he can parlay that 4.9 yards per carry over his career into what he does in Carolina, I mean, you're looking at a guy who's probably in that RB10 to RB15 range in 2023.
Ooh, I think you're a little high. A little high, Nate.
I don't think I am, because he didn't have a ton of volume last season, but he still had 1,000 yards. So we know he's capable of it. And he had 11 touchdowns.
I don't think they want to give him much more volume than he saw last season. That was a lot.
They're going to have to. And Frank Reich knows what he's got in Miles Sanders. He brought him in for a reason. And unless they do something, which there's nobody left in free agency at this point for the running back position, unless they go out and get Ezekiel Elliott, which I don't think they have the money or the desire to get an older running back like that. They're probably not going to do anything in the draft because they're taking a quarterback first overall. If they take CJ Stroud or Bryce Young, then Miles Sanders is going to get a ton of carries. If Andy Dalton's at quarterback, he's still going to get a ton of carries. Now, is he 200 plus carries? He'd probably right around that 200 carry range. But here's what I care about is the goal line touches. He's going to get more goal line touches than he got in Philly. This could be 11, 12, 13, 14 touchdown season for Sanders. And I know that sounds crazy. And I'm not saying that Carolina is necessarily going to blow things out of the water or he's going to look stellar in this offense. But I think that the red zone usage will be there enough to where he could even crack the top 10 in 2023 of running backs. Could. I'm not saying this is a definite statement, but I see the path to that being a possibility for him in 2023.
So Scott, where I'm struggling a little bit with, and Nate, I think the analysis you brought to the table, completely valid. I worry that he's been behind one of the best offensive lines his entire career. He had 260 carries last season. I don't think he can take much more than that. I don't think Miles Sanders is a 300 carry guy. I'm shocked he got 260. I didn't think he would ever get over that 220 mark, to be honest. 11 touchdowns last season. Like he had a good season. What we need is the pass catching coming back that we saw early in his career to give him that RB1 ceiling. Is there any hope that he can get that 50 receptions he saw his rookie season, be this 3-down workhorse that Nate is possibly projecting him in Carolina, Scott?
I don't see it. And there's because of 2 words, Deuce and Staley. Those are the 2 words that I'm using because he is now, I mean, Reich's bringing a bunch of people, he's assembling his crew. Deuce Staley is the assistant coach. He is the running backs coach, which is exactly what he was with the Eagles not too long ago. When Miles Sanders, everybody in fantasy football was clamoring for Miles Sanders to get more work. That was Deuce Staley. And he's the running backs coach there now. So unless he changes his tune significantly, I do think that they do something else at running back. They could bring in somebody like a Kareem Hunt, who's still available. I like Miles Sanders. I've always liked Miles Sanders. I really want to see what Miles Sanders could do if he was just, if he was just unleashed. I don't think it's going to be the case. It was, he was behind the best offensive line last year in football, and it's not going to be the case this year. So, I think at the same time, I'm not trying to say he's completely worthless. All I'm saying is I don't necessarily see a route to him being an RB1, a 3-down back necessarily. I think it is a relatively good landing spot, though, for Miles Sanders in that system.
So the one thing I want to say, Scott, when you say Kareem Hunt, I don't think they have the money to pay a guy like
I don't think you invest 25.4 mil over 4 years to Miles Sanders and pay another running back. So I am with you there.
Is that assuming that the salary cap is real?
Yes, we're seeing it. We are seeing a little bit of the effects of that right now. So
I'm
yes.
just joking around. No, that's true. I hadn't taken in the money account. I just threw a free agent running back name out that I remembered.
I am with you though. Right now, RB24 in underdog draft. So if he is around that ADP come August, like I'm all right with spending that type of capital on Miles Sanders. At that point, you're looking at a 7th, 8th round pick. I'm cool with it. But if it does get inflated, if more people are drinking that same juice that Nate is, I'm going to pass on that. Let's move to New England here. They had a couple exciting additions here. Juju Smith-Schuster, TikTok boy, he heads to New England, 3 years, $25 million. And it's crazy to see how Juju was once like thought to be a wide receiver one. I believed he was. And now he's getting paid less money than Jacoby Myers, Alan Lazard. It's just kind of crazy to see that. And Mike Gesicki joins him in the Patriots camp as well. 1 year, $4.5 million prove-it deal for Mike Gesicki. Scott, what's the fantasy football implications and your headline for the New England Patriots?
Well, my headline is team who sucks at acquiring pass catchers acquires 2 pass catchers.
That's gold.
And I really am more talking about drafting wide receivers than I am acquiring wide receivers. You might say, well, what about Jacoby Myers? Well, he was undrafted. He was the one success story. But I don't have to go into detail about the trouble the Patriots have had drafting, bringing in, whether it's a tight end, whether it's a receiver, over the past handful of years. It's been bad. It's been really bad. So, but I'm also not implying with this headline. I wanted to get in a shot at the Patriots anytime I can. I'm not implying that these 2 are going to suck. I don't think they're going to be league winners, but I do think that this was, again, relatively speaking, it wasn't a bad landing spot for these 2 guys. With Juju, I think part of his problem in Kansas City is, his best years likely behind him, but his best years also included heavy usage out of the slot. That's where he's been. Last year, for the first time in his career, he was running not out of the slot, more than 50% of his snaps. He was kind of all over the place, and I really had high hopes for Juju with Patrick Mahomes last year. And I'm not going to
we all did.
I'm not going to just say, oh, if they had put him in the slot more, he would have smashed. I'm not going to say that. What I am going to say is he very likely is going to step into Jacoby Myers' role and run the majority of his routes out of the slot. Jacoby Myers was 70+% last year. So, and as far as I'm concerned, he immediately steps in unless I'm missing somebody, and he's the wide receiver 1 in New England at this point. Tyquan Thornton ain't it. But what do you got? Yes,
you're forgetting about the other slot receiver they just signed, Mike Gesicki.
Well, okay, wide receiver. I said wide receiver 1, but yeah. And Gesicki, Gesicki's trajectory was going up until last year. Last year, it bottomed out. He regressed. He played all 17 games. He only started 1 game, and career lows across the board in volume. So,
I think that has a little bit to do with the Mike McDaniel system,
I agree.
and they have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle.
No, I agree. It's a little bit similar to the New York Giants in that the Dolphins, they targeted their tight ends bottom tier of the league is how much they targeted their tight ends. It's same with the Giants. Now with the Giants, that's probably going to change because they got Waller. But I think Gesicki is still a talented pass catching tight end. They have Hunter Henry, who's a better blocker. Gesicki is way better than Jonnu Smith at this point. It's tough to trust the Patriots bringing in an athletic pass catching tight end after so many of us were burned by Jonnu Smith.
Not me.
Where is he going right now? Where's Gesicki going? He's like tight end, low end tight end too.
Yeah, he's tight end 22.
Yeah,
tight end 23, somewhere around there. But here's the thing. So I actually just wrote about Mike Gesicki, Scott.
Cool.
This is why I'm so excited about it, because his numbers, if you look at his advanced metrics and advanced stats, he was much better than he showed out in fantasy this season. Because, like Seth said, Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, who are you going to throw the ball to? Not Mike Gesicki. But the Patriots had a real problem in the red zone with tight ends last season. Gesicki had more targets, catches, and touchdowns than Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry combined last season. And that was on a down year where he went from 112 targets in 2021 to 52 in 2022. And that's, like you said, Seth, the Mike McDaniel offense doesn't favor a guy like Gesicki. However, we've seen New England support high-end tight ends. Mike Gesicki's more Rob Gronkowski than he is Hunter Henry or Jonnu Smith. I'm not saying he's more of that style of player where he's a pass-catching tight end. He's a big body, and he works well in the red zone. And look,
I think that's Hunter Henry. That's what Hunter Henry is.
It's not Hunter Henry. It's not Hunter Henry.
Hunter Henry's great in the red zone.
No,
though.
dude. He's okay in the red zone. Mike Gesicki's far more athletic in the red zone.
I just don't want to play ring around the rosy with any of these pass catchers in this offense. I think that's the bottom line for fantasy. I'm not doing it. Nate, it sounds like you're drinking the same juice that you drank 2 years ago with Jonnu Smith. You're back on the lean, bud. You got to take it easy on that.
Well, no, see, this is different though. This is different. Like people with Jonnu Smith, and I was one of them. I'm guilty of this. I rolled the dice with him as my tight end one. He's going to smash in New England. I don't think that's what Nate's talking about here. He's not going to be a top 12 tight end, but I think his price, at least right now, as tight end 22. I mean, once you get past the top 12, it's a crapshoot anyway. But I think he has upside in this offense. I think it was a good move by the Patriots, honestly, because I think they're two solid pickups and they were dirt cheap. I mean, Gesicki was $4.5 million. That's $3 million less than freaking Hijinxs is making.
Yeah.
Well, I sent out a tweet the other day where I was looking at Gesicki's. Yeah, well, we send out tweets every day, Scott. It's what we do. But pertaining to Gesicki, the thing is in some major categories and for tight ends last season, he ranked in the top 5. His ADOT was like 3rd highest in the league amongst tight ends.
I don't want a high ADOT with my tight end though. Like I want one of those.
Why not?
They're
getting down. That means they're getting down the field.
I want a possession. I want possession tight ends that are going to get me PPR points. Like that's. I get what you're saying. We got Brad here in the chat weighing in. He says if you get Gesicki at tight end 22 and he finishes tight end 15, that's a win. I can see it. I just don't. I think he caps Hunter Henry's upside. I think it's both of it. I don't want to play this game. Brad also weighing in here in the chat saying that Juju's best years obviously came playing across from AB. Anything I'm missing here, Nate, that you kind of want to throw in here as a rebuttal? Because I just can't. I can't buy it. I can't. I don't want to play this game. I'd rather have Hijinxs. I'd rather have Dalton Kincaid for a cheaper price. Noah Fant. Tyler Conklin, like there are so many tight ends. Yeah, I want all those guys.
Look at this offense and look who
I'm
else.
I'm a Penn State guy.
I know, but look at the pass catchers in this offense. Seth, you got Devontae Parker, Juju, Kendrick Bourne, Tyquan Thornton, and Hunter Henry.
I forgot about Devontae Parker.
That's who he's competing. Exactly. Everybody forgot about Devontae Parker. That's why I had to say his name. Here's the thing. This isn't a talented wide receiver room. And if they want Mac Jones to succeed, Mike Gesicki is going to be the key to that. Now, is he going to have a season that blows our socks off? Maybe, probably not. He's probably not going to get 100 targets. He'll get more than the 52. But here's the thing. The bar is low for tight ends in fantasy. You get outside of Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews, and it's an absolute shit show crapshoot. We have no idea where these guys are going to finish. Look at Juwan Johnson. He came on late in the season, and he finishes tight end 15. So when you're looking at the tight end position, the bar is low, and Gesicki is probably a tight end 1 tier next season. In a
redraft, I'm not drafting him. He's been on the waiver wire by week 5 the last 2 seasons. He was in a better situation in Miami, not this past season, but in 2021. He definitely was. It was him and Jalen Waddle and the ghost of Devontae Parker. So
yeah, and he balled out in 2020.
Well, and that's the thing though, like in redraft, I mean, I agree because we're talking about him being a deal at tight end 22. And like Brad said, it's technically a win if he's tight end 15. But in a 12-team redraft, I mean, I'm not drafting backup tight ends, so you wouldn't draft him.
I'll throw a dart on it.
2020, he was tight end 7. 2021, he was tight end 9 in PPR formats.
He was still dropped in 2021, though. He was still dropped. He might have been.
Well, that's ridiculous. I didn't drop him. I know he had some down weeks, but like, guys, what we got to remember is the bar is so low at tight end. This isn't like grading every other position where it's like, he's a back end wide receiver 3.
All right. Okay.
That's all I'm saying.
We're moving on here.
I just realized we stole Nate's rare from later in the show.
Yeah, that's okay. We don't need to talk anymore about it. Let's go to the Cowboys here. They start by cutting Ezekiel Elliott. The ties, man. I mean, we thought Jerry Jones would never do it. He was so deep in this one. Scott, what's your headline and the fantasy football implications of it?
Mine is Pollard stands rejoice ... for now. So obviously this is good news for Tony Pollard. who fit, depending on how you look at leaderboards, the leaderboard I create is he was the RB7 points per game PPR. So he was an RB1 with Zeke there most of the time. They're not going to stick. The reason I say for now is because thoughts of Tony Pollard being this 3-down Saquon Barkley, that's not going to happen. The Cowboys have shown us that that's not going to happen. And I honestly don't think that's where he would excel. I mean, like I said, he was RB7 in 2022, and that was seeing less than 50% of the RB rush attempts in that offense. He's an explosive playmaker, and I think he needs to stay that. They're not going to go into the season with him and Malik Davis, and they did just today re-sign Rico Dowdle, but they're gonna likely draft a running back. There's lots of rumors about it jumping up and being Bijan, and that would be a very Jerry Jones move. It'd be a pretty stupid move in my opinion, but that'd be a very Jerry Jones move. But they could easily go for one of the kind of bigger bruiser rookies in the 3rd or 4th round, somewhere in there. Like Charbonnet, Chase, there's a whole slew of them. So, I did say, rejoice for now. That was only because I don't think Pollard's going to be a bell cow. His injury is, 3 to 4 month timeline. He should be good to go by training camp. But I'm still going to be ranking him as a low end RB1, regardless of who they draft, unless it's Bijan. If they do draft Bijan, then I'm going to have to relook at everything. But yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Nate, final question here on Tony Pollard. We'll wait to talk on Zeke until he does land somewhere. Question on Pollard, though. If you're in a dynasty league, would you consider moving him right now? Because right now he has a clear path to be the RB1 for the Cowboys. By April 30th, that door might shut, and we might see just one season from in Dallas here.
It's going to depend on your league mates. And if you have people that aren't reading the same news we're reading, because most of the people who are reading the news we're reading are pretty sure that Dallas is going to do exactly what they shouldn't do, like you said, Scott, and they're going to draft Bijan Robinson because it's Jerry Jones. It's what Jerry Jones does.
I don't think they can get him at that pick, though. I don't think
they can trade, but they can trade up. We've seen Bijan mocked as low as 30. So
I've also seen him go as
never know.
I've seen him go as high as 10, though, and he just met with the Eagles here recently. I could see him going there. I don't know if he gets past 10, to be honest, at this point.
I mean, I would move him at this point if I can, probably, depending on my roster construction. But here's kind of the thing that I'm looking at is that his upside is being a pass-catching back. He only exceeded 15 carries once all season, or twice all season. One of them was 22 carries. One of them was 18 carries. So he's not a workhorse running back. That's not where his value is, despite the 9 rushing touchdowns. But most of those were longer touchdowns. He's not a red zone back. So either that role goes to Ronald Jones, which we all know isn't going to happen.
It's not going to Ronald Jones.
It's not going to Ronald Jones.
Roster.
Right. Or it goes to somebody, like you said, 3rd, 4th round guy like Chase Brown, Zach Charbonnet. We'll see how that all plays out. But his upside is in the passing game, and none of those guys are going to cut into his passing work. So the path is there for him to be an RB1 tier player in 2023. So if you are going to move him, if you're moving him ahead of the draft, make sure you're getting a good return for him. Get a 1st or 2nd round rookie pick. Get a solid veteran that can fill a hole in your lineup, someone who has top tier value, because that's what Pollard likely will be in Dallas in 2023.
RB11 right now on Underdog Fantasy Drafts, going in that mid 3rd round right now, ahead of guys like Travis Etienne, Ramondre, Najee, Dalvin. That's kind of the range you're looking at if you want to invest in Tony Pollard. I want to see more. I want to see what happens in camp. I want to see what happens in the draft before I weigh in more on this. Let's stick with Dallas, though. Let's stick with the great Lone Star State here. And the Texans, they've traded Brandon Cooks for a 2023 5th round pick and a 2024 6th round pick. Cowboys will take on $12 million of that salary. In addition, they also have signed Dalton Schultz to a 1-year contract as well. Schultz, I don't think, is too happy with his agent after getting a 3-year offer last year, turning it down, trying to play out what he had. And my headline here is Texans Cowboys practice the old Texas switcheroo. And I do not know what Texas switcheroo is, but I would still not Google that one either. I think Anything with Texas and switcheroo in there, I'm not Googling that.
Better safe than sorry.
Wait, you don't know what it means, but it's your headline?
Yeah, I
Okay.
thought it was a good headline, so I just didn't want to take the chance. I didn't want the browser to get, bogged down by any possible results of Texas switcheroo. However, so the Texans, they're getting Dalton Schultz and and Brandon Cooks, he is going to he's going to the Cowboys here. And look, Cooks, he's 29. He's been traded 4 times in his NFL career. I think he's a low-end wide receiver, high-end wide receiver 3. That's where he's been throughout most of his career. Take out that concussion 2019 season and this past one where he just didn't play games. Like, he literally just sat out games because he's pissed off the organization. And he's been a wide receiver 2 for 6 straight seasons without those 2. Wide receiver 46 right now. That is a value in drafts. I will take him in our best balls. However, I bet when redraft season comes around, that's probably going to about even out. And I don't think it's going to be as crazy of a value. Before I move on and talk about the Schultz implications, Scott, is that where you have him right now in your ranks too? Is probably somewhere back end 2, high end number 3 wide receiver?
Yeah, and I agree that current, especially in best ball, that current wide receiver number he's at is a steal. I think this is a really good move by the Cowboys. I think he fits really well. I mean, he's the field stretcher that he's still got it. We talk about Thielen still having it. Cooks is only 29. And I'm kind of discounting whether you want to blame him and say you should have been out there. Things were not right last year in Houston. So I'm kind of scrapping last year as far as trying to draw too much from it. However, based on who all the other pass catchers in that system, this could be one of those moves that is really good for the NFL Cowboys, but it could be kind of murky for fantasy.
Kills Michael Gallup's value. It was already in question and it's done now.
Yeah, so I have a feeling where he's going to be come redraft season. I'm probably not going to be drafting him where he's going.
Same.
But I've been underestimating Brandon Cooks for it feels like the last 10 years, and so we'll see.
Ties Eric Dickerson for the player traded most in his career. We'll see if it happens one more time and he can break that. Dalton Schultz is the other side of this pill here, Nate. I like him. He's been a top 5 in most tight end categories over these past 2 seasons. And he's probably right now like the best weapon that Bryce Young, whatever rookie quarterback comes in here, is going to have on this team. There's not a lot of options. Nico Collins being the number 1 wideout. We think they'll probably add a talented rookie wide receiver, possibly try to trade up in that first round and get someone else as well. But tight end 11 right now in best balls, which I think is a bit of a value. And I think that could even fall a little bit with some of these talented rookies coming in that could push that down a little bit. If I miss out on Travis Kelce, I'm okay with waiting on a guy like Schultz, like Evan Ingram, kind of these back-end tight end 1 candidates, maybe grab a rookie dart throw. Are you in that camp as well, that you'll put some commitment here in Schultz?
It's going to depend on what they do in the draft. Because if you look at their picks, they've got 2 overall. That's where they get their quarterback. Then they've got 12 overall, which has been mocked a million different ways. Then they've got 33rd overall. So just out of the first round, they have another pick. So essentially, in practice, they have 3 basically first round picks in this draft because we have a voided pick and the first round is only 31 picks. So depending on what they do, I think they get a wide receiver with one of those last 2 picks in that first round kind of realm. If they do that, I think it hurts Schultz, honestly. But then again, to be fair,
still probably the number 2 option, though.
Still probably the number 2. I don't know, though, because Nico Collins has looked serviceable.
Oh, my goodness.
Goodness. No, not my goodness. Look, he's a talented
high tonight. You were on drugs.
Funny enough, I am on nothing, sir. Here's the thing. We have seen a warped Houston Texans offense for a few seasons. This is a team that believed in Davis Mills, as I did, but they haven't paid up for coaching. They ran out Lovie Smith. This team has been a mess. Does that change with DeMeco Ryan? I do believe it does. But I also believe that DeMeco Ryan's a defensive guy. And what do we see defensive coaches do?
Target.
They run the
ball, target your tight end, run
target tight ends.
Personnel.
But is this team really going to throw the ball much with a rookie? I guess it depends on who they take.
I think if you're investing someone at number 2 overall, I think you are going to throw the ball. Scott, any thoughts? You were shaking your head down there a little bit with Nate's hype up of Nico Collins and more obscure players here in the league.
I don't remember what I was shaking my head at, but I think, I mean, it's really hard to say whether this is better or worse, neutral for Schultz, in my opinion. I'm looking at the Underdog best ball rankings, though, and I mean, tight end 11 seems about right, actually. And I'm basing that more on looking at who I would put him over. You've got Njoku ahead of him. I might put him over Njoku. But once you get past that, I mean,
yeah,
again,
he's the
I
only
think
person.
Schultz represents, at least right now in March, he represents kind of a tier break. After Schultz, it gets ugly. So I think
the
that's
Dawson Knoxes, Cole Kmets of the world, Greg Dulcich. That's kind of what you're looking at that point. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean,
all Nate's favorite players that I just named.
Pretty much.
I think it's about right where he's at right now. I agree. I mean, if they spend some high draft capital on wide receiver, it inevitably hurts Schultz's volume. But I mean, he's a savvy tight end veteran on a young rebuilding team, and tight ends. I'm actually doing. I'll share it with you guys when I'm done. I'm doing a real big deep dive on whether rookie quarterbacks have actually been good for tight ends in fantasy or not. Because the common thinking is like, oh, a tight end safety valve for a young rookie quarterback. And that's totally logical. But I'm actually looking at the numbers going back very far. Well, I'll let you know. So far, preliminary data, yeah, it's a little bit of an uptick for the tight end based on what they did the previous year.
Let's go. All right. I like that. In other news here, guys, Cincinnati, they make a splashy headline here with Orlando Brown, left tackle from Kansas City, coming over for a 4-year, $64 million deal. And Orlando Brown, guys, he was one of the top free agents. Some places ranked the top free agent after the Chiefs did not franchise tag him. Jonah Williams, though, now, who was their left tackle, he wants out because he doesn't want to play the right side, which does hurt his value when he does hit the open market. People want to sign left tackles, not right tackles. Nate, what was your overall takeaway and your headline for Mr. Orlando Brown Jr., if I may add, heading to the great city of Cincinnati, Ohio?
So as someone who has done offensive line rankings, I was very glad to see this one pop up, and then I get to talk about my boy Orlando Brown. Big boy Brown busting heads in Cincy. So first of all, he's huge. I don't know if people realize how big he's 6'8", 318 pounds.
Good Lord.
That's a truck. That's a fucking truck. And this is what Cincinnati needed. They needed that blindside protection for Burrow to make sure that they're protecting their investment. I love to see it for Burrow for his safety. He doesn't have to be as mobile in the pocket as he's been. Maybe he's not going to have to shuffle around as much. Maybe he can be a little bit more stable in the pocket. But that said, can you really bump Joe Burrow any higher? You can't. This doesn't move the needle for me on Burrow. And when it comes to Mixon and the rushing attack, of course, this is helpful. But again, can you bump him any higher? Could this help his efficiency? 3.9 yards per carry, which I attributed earlier to Miles Sanders. My bad. So many numbers. But that's where I think it helps. This is going to add stability to that line, and it might help Mixon maybe be a little bit more efficient this year. From a football standpoint, shocked that Kansas City let him go. Could not believe they didn't re-sign him. He was like the stalwart, the Mount Rushmore of this offensive line in Kansas City. I'm happy to see Cincinnati get protection for Burrow, hopefully keep him healthy for longer. But fantasy-wise, it doesn't move the needle for me much because this offense was already so electric with a shitty line. Now all it is it's security for Burrow, security for Mixon, maybe some more time in the pocket that he doesn't necessarily need because he's learned to live with no time behind a bad line. But I love the move for Cincinnati, and I'm sure that Burrow's got to be ecstatic that his blind side is now shored up and he doesn't have to worry about it.
Yeah, I think this is one of those examples. This is more of a football move rather than a fantasy football move. And I think we can just about leave it at that. And let's go ahead and jump into our next segment here, and let's break down some more best ball targets and fades with Temperature Check.
Temperature Check.
That's really spicy. Holy shit.
So hot, baby. That's Temperature Check here. And let's just dive right into it. Let's talk a little bit about our scale here. if you eat steak like a normal adult human, rare is the best level. Medium, that's right in the medium, and well done. That means you're out on this player completely. Well, you're kind of in the middle. You're kind of about done with them. I'm not like that. I'm still a child. I don't eat rare steaks, folks. I'm sorry. I don't do it. Maybe one day I will get there. However, I am rare on this player, guys, and it is Frisky Jets season already. Allen Lazard, I believe, is currently the best value in best ball drafts across all platforms. 58, wide receiver 58 off of Underdog Fantasy. That's an 11th round pick for Mr. Lazard. And I say, okay, let me head over to NFC, which is some of the higher stake tournaments. A lot of times it's $100, $250, $500, $1,000 buy-in over on NFC. Nope, wide receiver 66 over there. And this isn't only a reconnection with possibly Aaron Rodgers when he gets dealt over there, but also Nathaniel Hackett. The last time these guys linked up, it was a career high 8 touchdowns for Mr. Allen Lazard on only 60 targets. Like, Allen Lazard's ceiling here, if Rodgers does join this team, which we know it's a matter of when, not if, double-digit touchdowns. That's his ceiling right now. He had a 21% target share last year. I think Garrett Wilson is an alpha, so that will go down a little bit, but I can't see it dropping below that 19-20% range, leaving him as a wide receiver 3 at his floor and a possible wide receiver 2 ceiling for a 11th, 12th, 13th round pick in some places here. Nate, I love Allen Lazard. I can't get enough of him.
Well, wide receiver 58, like you said, that is a steal, absolute steal. As a wide receiver 2 in an offense that may have Aaron Rodgers, and if it more than likely will have Aaron Rodgers, he can support 2 wide receivers. He's done it his whole career. And a wide receiver 58 for a guy who's likely to finish inside the top 30 on the low end.
36, top 36.
No, I'm saying inside the top. I'm telling you he's going to finish inside the top 30 in an offense with Aaron Rodgers. It's going to happen. Even with Garrett Wilson can be a wide receiver 1. He can be a mid-range to high-range wide receiver 3 with wide receiver 2 upside. This is a steal.
Scott, any thoughts here on our guy Allen Lazard?
Yeah, I mean, wide receiver 58 is a steal for a wide receiver that's going to finish right around probably 46. That's about all I have to say.
Okay.
I'm not super high on Lazard, even if Rodgers goes there. I mean, he only had a rookie last year in his way with Rodgers in Green Bay, and I have Fantasy Pros in front of me, but it doesn't have the numbers. I don't know where he finished.
He was a wide receiver 3, I think, in that 34-35 range last season was where he finished.
Yeah. So I mean, I would see that as a ceiling, especially with somebody like Garrett Wilson there. Breece Hall is going to be catching a bunch of passes.
I think the connection with Nathaniel Hackett is what makes me excited, in that he wasn't used very much in that gold zone and in that red zone. So I really think that he can kind of have a better connection down there where it matters, where you're getting 6 fantasy points on the dot. That's where I like him, and I think his ceiling can improve, me personally. But Scott, go ahead with one of your let's stick with targets here. Who's someone you're targeting in best balls right now?
So my rare, let me get there, is crazy guy Jamal Williams, new Saints running back. I think
crazy train, baby.
I think he's an excellent best ball guy. I mean, currently he's RB 34. And I mean, granted, last season, his high RB finish was largely due to having a ridiculous 33 goal line carries, the most in quite some time, and 17 rushing touchdowns. But, so that's why I'm not predicting that he's going to finish as, RB 15. But I think RB 34 is a steal in the Saints system, because I think whether or not Kamara misses time due to a potential suspension, Jamal Williams is locked in there. He has a role. If Kamara gets suspended, it's even more of a role. But I mean, I think this is what the Saints, it's different. It's different coaching, obviously, but the Saints, when they were firing, when Kamara was firing, was when there was a hammer in Mark Ingram to handle more of the early down work and between the tackles work. The last 2 seasons, Kamara has carried the ball too much, in my opinion, and it's affected his fantasy output. I think Jamal Williams is a great fit here. I think he'll be the goal line guy. I think it'll be similar to what he was in Detroit. I'm not projecting 17 rushing touchdowns, but double digits, well within range. And he didn't catch the ball in Detroit. That's because they had DeAndre Swift. He caught some passes in Green Bay. He had a season where he had 5 receiving touchdowns, 45 targets back in 2019. So that skill is there. So if Kamara, I think that if the Saints know Kamara is getting suspended, they'll probably try and bring in some sort of pass catching running back potentially. Again, I'm not sure what their cap situation is off the top of my head, but in best ball, especially a guy that could, just drop 3 touchdowns. And
Perfect best ball target.
That's a guy I want. Plus, I love him so much as a person.
Just hilarious human being. Super excited for his opportunity here, and all the quotes we're going to continue to get from Jamal Williams. And Nate, this leads right into someone that you're fading here as well. Who would that be?
Well, we just said his name. It's Alvin Kamara. He's well done to me. So first of all, if you've seen any of the legal stuff, and I'm not a lawyer, but as a fantasy manager, you want to kind of try and figure out where some of this stuff is headed.
You're not a lawyer, but you are a lawyer of the housing market.
Yeah, sure. It's a little different. We don't deal with.
Is that not a realtor? Is that not correct? Maybe.
Yeah, no, that is correct. Like,
you're right.
I kind of practice
lawyers. You're right.
But here's the thing: is there's nothing criminal about the law that I practice. Hopefully, try and keep away from that. But if you've seen the videos, Kamara's kind of fucked, man. Like, there isn't a jury that's going to look at this and be like, no, it was fine. It was self-protection. And then afterward, he's talking about, I kicked this guy's ass. Like, dude's in trouble. I think Drew Davenport, if you don't follow Drew Davenport, if you're looking for legal advice on all this fantasy football stuff and what's happening with all that, make sure you follow him on Twitter. Dude, he could easily miss half of 2023 if he doesn't miss the entire season. Regardless of if he gets convicted, there's a suspension coming because it's pretty egregious. Like, he did some shitty shit in Las Vegas during the Pro Bowl of all things. Like, bro, focus on the flag football game. But he was also on the decline already. I mean, 2022 was one of his worst seasons. He's not a guy who rushes for 1,000 yards. He's a guy who works in the passing game. And as a running back, as your legs get more tired, you get older, you get slower, you start to have problems with your knees because you're using them more often. He becomes less effective as that person. You're not going to see him, whether or not he plays, getting the kind of work he got in the past. And to the previous point of who we just talked about, Jamal Williams all but kind of guarantees that Kamara's goal line touches go away because they don't need him to be that guy anymore. They've got Jamal Williams, and that's the kind of – Derek Carr's not adept inside the 20s throwing the ball. He hasn't been a great red zone passer in his career. Kamara's cooked, man. Like, I hate to say it, but if you have him in Dynasty, sell him. And if you're in a best ball draft at RB21, if he plays the whole season, he might get to RB28. Maybe. But if he doesn't play half the season, we're talking about RB60, RB50, and you've wasted draft capital on a guy who's not going to do anything for you.
So I want to set aside the legal thing for a second. Like, obviously, and I mean, it's hard to ignore the video. And personally, I think consequences should be there. But for the sake of this discussion, obviously, if he's suspended, he's not worth RB21. So let's just for a second hypothetically pretend he's not. I actually think I don't think he's cooked. I think that the last 2 seasons were a product of one. Like I said, I did a pretty deep dive onto this too to look at what went wrong with Alvin Kamara, and he wasn't being utilized in the way that he was, during his heyday, during his RB4 overall RB1 years. He was getting less targets. He was getting more rush attempts. Yes, Jamal Williams will take goal line carries away, but Jamal Williams, I believe, will allow Kamara to be back in his sweet spot of what I call opportunity ratio, the percentage of your opportunities that are targets and the percentage that are rush attempts. He was skewed way towards rush attempts both the last 2 seasons, and last year it was beyond me why he was not getting more targets. Like, how do you allow that to happen as a coach? So if he plays the whole season, I actually think this is kind of good for him. I would take him at RB21. And I do have him in a Dynasty League, and I am trying to trade him, but my commissioner needs to turn on the trades.
Yeah, let's go. A little more shit talking on Nate there. Let's stay with the Saints, guys, because I think you both make very valid points. There's a mixed opinion out there I believed everything Nate was telling me. And then Scott's making a very good point. If there isn't a suspension, that maybe that is a value for Alvin Kamara. I'm going to move on to one of the players that I am well on, and that is Chris Olave. And listen, I love Chris Olave. I was one of the guys, Scott, you know it. You've called me out. I hyped him up this time last year coming out of Ohio State. Love the guy. But the cost to me is just absurd right now. Wide receiver 14 on Underdog, 24th overall, a second-round pick for best balls. Wide receiver 16, a little bit better fourth-round ADP over on NFC boards. Still, guys, like this is a guy, he gave you 119, 72, and 1,000 last year, but was only wide receiver 25 in 15 games, and that's because of touchdowns. It's a DJ Moore type of issue. And I think Olave can score touchdowns. I'm not saying that, but now he gets Derek Carr coming in. Laughingly career low touchdown rate. Pete Carmichael, the guy's been running an offense from 2010 for fucking 13 years. It is despicable. And then Dennis Allen, I think he could have possibly been fired. I know it was his first year. They were rebuilding, whatever. He made some questionable decisions. And now Michael Thomas might be back as well. Nate, go ahead. You're muted. Go ahead.
Dennis Allen should have been fired, and you're right to be down on Chris Olave because of Dennis Allen. I don't know what this franchise is doing keeping him around. He's a death knell for a lot of these guys' fantasy value. Plain and simple.
I think Pete Carmichael, is even more just because he has been there for so long and he doesn't run a super up-to-date offense. Scott, any thoughts on Chris Olave here? I know our guy Mike Stoyanov is listening tonight. I know he's taken one to the heart because he loves this man.
I mean, I do too. I really like Chris Olave, and I think this is almost 100% situational. Nothing to it does seem a little high. It seems a little high with who's around him. I'm not going to trash Derek Carr as much. I think we talked about this, a couple of weeks ago. I think Derek Carr is a QB upgrade compared to last year, in my opinion. But it's just a little too high. If you look at him with the other stud rookie, Garrett Wilson, who's wide receiver 9 on Underdog, which is kind of insane in and of itself. That seems about right as far as where I have those two together. But Garrett Wilson, if Rodgers, wouldn't it be the ultimate Rodgers if he didn't go to the Jets?
Stop it. Don't put those vibes out there, you son of a bitch.
If Rodgers goes, that makes more sense with Garrett Wilson. With Olave, it's a tricky situation. It depends also on Michael Thomas. There's two trains of thought there. If Michael Thomas ends up playing the whole year, is that better or for worse? It's that age-old discussion. Takes volumes, but takes attention. That whole thing. But at this point, that seems high in best ball.
I'd rather take DK Metcalf, right, kind of in that range, or wait and just get a guy like Christian Watson a couple rounds later. Drake London, there's so many other guys. I think I just rather wait than pay that very expensive price for Chris Olave with those concerns. Scott, hit us with your best ball fade right now as the market currently stands over there on Underdog and NFC.
It was honestly kind of hard for me to find a fade at this point. You're
an optimistic guy, Scott.
I guess, but you guys might have covered this guy last week, but my fade's DJ Moore with the Bears, and I really like DJ Moore. I've always liked DJ Moore.
Thank you for this.
The talent is there. He's a really, really good wide receiver. For whatever reason, and I mean the thing is he hasn't been a big touchdown scorer in his career. So his fantasy numbers, he hasn't ever really threatened for top 5 or anything like that. So a lot of times, on the surface, he gets dogged for that, but he's put up some really good seasons. His target shares, his volume, for the most part, aside from a couple of seasons, have been elite. And I think percentage-wise, I think his target share will be very good in Chicago. It's just that what that percentage is a percentage of is too small. It's too small for him to get to the wide receiver too. There's a lot of comparison with Justin Fields and the Bears, Jalen Hurts and the Eagles. The step up they took. The Eagles, right. They rush the ball over 500 times in 2021, and then they, Jalen Hurts took that step, supported 2 top 24 wide receivers. So people are thinking maybe that can happen with Justin Fields. I like Justin Fields. I think he's going to be good. they have too far to go in one season for there to be enough passing volume, in my opinion, for DJ Moore to threaten the wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 numbers. He's going to be the number 1 option, I believe, passing wise. But I mean, the run to pass ratio, the lack of pass attempts last year, it was historically low. They just
It'll get better. It'll get better, but not.
It'll get better, but it's starting from such a low place to expect enough of an increase in just one season. That's, to me, not probable. That's not likely. So that's why DJ Moore is unfortunately a fade for me at wide receiver 21. I think he's more of a wide, not too far off. I think he's probably a high end.
You're drafting him at his ceiling, though. That's what I've been saying this for 4 years on this goddamn podcast, and I don't know how many people have been listening for that duration of the time, but that's the issue with DJ Moore is you're always drafting him at his ceiling.
Here's the thing,
hype.
I'm excited for him for a change of scenery. For sure. Forget all the stats and everything. That can be a boost. And I'm excited for him, over the course of the next few years with Chicago and that offense, because they are now starting. Last year was whoa, what's going on? But they are starting to build something now.
Yeah. No more thoughts from, I don't think, Nate and I on DJ Moore. We've talked almost nauseating about him the last couple of weeks, but I'm going to round us out with here a little double whammy for you guys here. I'm well done on DeAndre Swift. I don't want any part of him at RB19 right now on underdogs, and I'm rare on backfield mate David Montgomery coming over to Chicago's. And we talked a little bit about him. This news actually dropped as we were going live last week, but I've had some time now to sit, look at the data, reassess it. And here's what I'll say. You are drafting DeAndre Swift, like you just mentioned with DJ Moore, at his ceiling at RB19 here. I love this guy. He was my running back 2 coming out of that 2020 class. I loved him, but he is maxed out around 150 carries per season. And Detroit making this investment in Montgomery is saying they don't believe any differently. Miles Sanders, we saw take that nice leap last week or last year, as we mentioned, Nate, going from about 150, 175 carries up to that 260 mark. Dave Montgomery, you can lock him up for 200 carries. That's who he is. He's not a bell cow by any means, but he's a guy who's going to have 250 200 carries. And Jamal Williams was just an adequate pass catcher. He was decent in Green Bay in that 2020 and the 2019 season, Scott, but he was never revolutionary, never broke 300 receiving yards. Dave Montgomery, though, 3 straight years of 300 receiving yards, a better yards per reception than Swift. Count him for 200 plus carries and more receiving work than Williams. Maybe there's more goal line opportunity for Swift, but I think his passing work is going to get eaten into even more. I want Montgomery here. I think he's the value, and I think Swift is the landmine.
Well, go ahead, Scott.
Okay. I agree. Montgomery is a huge value there. I love Montgomery in Detroit. However, I don't think this is DeAndre Swift's ceiling, and here's part of the reason. Last year was seemingly a train wreck for DeAndre Swift. He was the RB16. We're looking at RB19. He was the RB16.
Points per game.
Points per game. And last year was, I think, DeAndre Swift's absolute floor as far as what he can do. Now, I agree. I think the whole community overestimated DeAndre Swift from the get-go. Not
Guilty.
Necessarily me too.
Guilty.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. I still think he has the talent. I think it's been revealed to us by the Lions that that's not how they're going to use him. But I'm taking this from one of my guys, JJ Zachariason, from his podcast. He mentioned the first two seasons, Montgomery or Swift was right around 50% of the running back rush attempts, right around 50%. Tony Pollard-esque. Last year, that plummeted. So it depends on which train of thought you're in. Do you think it's going to stay at that career low, or is it going to go back up? Not to say Montgomery isn't going to get his, but I think that both of these running backs will thrive. I'm off the DeAndre Swift as an RB1 or the RB1 train, but I still think he's an RB2. And I mean, again,
an RB19, you're willing to make that?
I'm willing to. I mean, based on everybody, the mindset is last year DeAndre Swift was a massive disappointment, and he was still ahead of this RB rank.
I think what it comes down for me, and Nate, I'd love to hear your opinion on it, is I will not draft DeAndre Swift at RB19 because I think David Montgomery has just as good of a chance, if not a better chance, to finish in that RB2 range. Nate, bring it home here for us.
So here's the thing, is that if you watch film and look at stats, David Montgomery is more DeAndre Swift than he is Jamal Williams. He's not he's not the bruising type of back that Jamal Williams is. He's not that solid red zone guy, but he can be that back. And this is the difference. DeAndre Swift was so disappointing in the red zone. The guy cannot punch it in, plain and simple. It's if you want to see what it's like, see DeAndre Swift at the goal line trying to punch in a touchdown, Google a GIF of someone running into a brick wall, because that's what it looked like all season. The dude doesn't have the power to be that guy. Whereas David Montgomery not only can be that guy in the red zone, but he can be that guy in the gold zone between the 20s, where he can be the pass catching back. He can be that elusive back. He can be that smooth as silk back. And to me, when they signed David Montgomery, that was an indictment on DeAndre Swift. It was, this guy's a nice niche player, but he can't get it done ultimately. And we need that guy who's good in all facets of the game. I have a hard time believing that on DeAndre Swift is even going to be an RB2 next season. I don't think he's going to see the volume. I think we're going to see David Montgomery suck so much of that work away, that like the point scoring fantasy work inside the 20s. DeAndre Swift is fine between the 20s, but once you get into the red zone, he's kind of a liability for an offense, and we saw it in Detroit last season. If this is a team that wants to get serious about running the ball at the goal line like they did last season, which is what Dan Campbell is all about, DeAndre Swift's value is kind of dead to me. He's an RB3 in my brain, and that's his ceiling to me.
I still just look at Jamal Williams last year scored 17 rushing touchdowns, had 33 goal line carries, and DeAndre Swift finished as the RB16.
Sure. But when you bring in a guy who does the same things that DeAndre Swift does, you don't need DeAndre Swift to do it as much. They're paying David Montgomery.
I think it's a pretty far cry. I mean, yes, David Montgomery is a much better pass catcher than Jamal Williams, but I think to say that he can just replace DeAndre Swift's explosiveness in the passing game, I think that's a stretch. Personally.
No,
I'm not saying that he can replace it.
He can't replace it, but he has a better yards per reception. He is just as a consistent pass catcher. Montgomery is there.
And so you could very well be right. I don't think that this is necessarily as big of an indictment on Swift. I think we have to adjust and get Swift out of the trade 3 first rounders for
right, because he did have like overall RB1 upside at one point. Yes.
He's similar to Kamara. It's like he's being faded. It's like an overcorrection to where he's almost becoming a value again, in my opinion. That's my opinion about Swift. I think he's still going to get his in the passing game. And I still just look at things couldn't have really gone worse for him last year. And he was the RB16.
Okay. So, some debate here tonight. I like it. I love the little fire we got rolling over here at the IBP podcast.
None of us are right or wrong for another 6 months.
Yeah, we shall see what happens here soon, guys. Let's round it out here. A little bit of weekly advice.
Weekly advice.
All right, finally out here in Pennsylvania, where I'm at, where our guy Jim Scott is at. We're getting in the 50s back again, guys. February was kind of warm. February, you're feeling those vibes, spring vibes coming. And then March, it came in like a lion, and it has been trash. But now we're finally getting those spring vibes. And part of that spring vibes come with spring cleaning, getting the house spruced up, getting your vehicle spruced up. And to help us chat a little bit about this, we're beginning Kyle Scott. Kyle, you're an audio producer, editor extraordinaire. How are you doing over there in that really nice looking sweater you got on?
Yeah, thank you. I'm trying to stay cozy. While it is in the 50s today, it does dip quite a bit in the nighttime. But it's also just fashionable and fun to wear. So I'm doing great. I'm having fun hanging out.
It looks homemade, Kyle.
It's not homemade.
Did you hand knit that?
No, some Irish person made this.
A little bit of culture.
I think.
Okay.
I love it.
A little bit of culture coming in here. Kyle, have you started your spring cleaning yet, my friend?
I don't necessarily do like a spring cleaning. I clean I guess.
Okay.
I like
So-
to keep on top of it.
Okay. So for me, the big thing is like around this time of year is I like spruce up my vehicles. I'll pull them out for a day. I'll get the bush lights cracked. Oh, as we're talking about this, we get Rory Picks, the bush light king himself, tuning in tonight. Hey, Rory, good to see you tonight, buddy. Thanks for tuning in. But like my first like spring cleaning hack as we get in here is like make it a freaking time. Beer up, crank them fucking tunes up, and reward yourself afterwards. Whether that's getting a little pizza, whether that's, you know, smoking on something else, whatever you want to do, like reward yourself after this. But like I enjoy just the process of pulling out the vehicles, getting underneath the truck in the car, getting them clean, that whole thing. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at on spring cleaning here. Kyle, and any thoughts on what I had to share, and or any hacks that you would like to share with the audience as well tonight?
Yeah, I think cleaning your cars is a great idea, especially over the winter. You just throw shit in the back seat, like your trunk just gets covered in mud and snow and gravel and salt. And yeah, by this time of the year, your car needs a good clean. That's a great point. My in line with that, I would say, when you're cleaning in your house, one of the first things I want to do when I'm spring cleaning is open up those windows. Like you said, it's nice out, get a nice breeze going.
Ooh.
But then you're gonna notice these blinds are dusty as hell. So you're gonna want to dust your blinds.
I never dust I don't know if I've ever dusted blinds my entire life, Kyle. That's very smart.
Yeah, you have a cat now, so it's especially important.
Appreciate that looking out there. Nate, what about you, man? Out there in Colorado, I know it's starting to get a little bit nicer out there. You can get outside and, maybe smoke on something as well. I don't know. I'm just saying, you can do a lot of stuff outside right now. What do you get into? What spring cleaning hacks can you offer?
Well, I hate my yard. So, and it's still too cold. Grass isn't green yet. Trees aren't budding yet here. So we do a lot of inside stuff. And to Kyle's point, Seth, with a cat, they're going to ruin your blinds. Just be aware of that. We paid like $3,000 for blinds to cover this house when we moved in, and they're all stained to shit. So here are the biggest things. I can tell you, if you're going through a spring clean, if your microwave is disgusting, take a little bowl of vinegar, just white distilled vinegar, microwave it for about 45 seconds in that microwave, and everything just kind of comes off with the paper towel. Super easy. And also, the hardest part is just get started. Just do something. But with the kid, we have to clean all year, so there's no real spring cleaning. Let's be honest. This house is a mess 24/7.
Okay.
Scott can attest.
Scott, how do you feel about it? Do you and the wife over there get involved with some spring cleaning? I know you guys got 2 younger girls running around causing chaos out there in the Rainier household as well.
Yeah, we don't really have a spring cleaning event. We just kind of have to clean most of it. And it's actually, it's not as much the girls anymore now that they've gotten a little bit older, but I would say one way to have your house be clean is to not get 2 golden retrievers. We have 2 and they shed and we vacuum constantly. Either we vacuum constantly or there's just dog hair everywhere. It's one of the 2. So some of my advice is I wouldn't necessarily call these like life hacks, but one is, if you can, weather permitting, mix up your inside and outside chores. What I really like about this time of year is getting back out in the yard for the first time in a while.
Yes.
I don't really particularly enjoy doing yard work, but it's just nice to be outside and have the blood running and not be sitting at this desk where I sit all winter. And don't put too much pressure on yourself. I mean, maybe I'm getting older and more jaded, but like it's just going to get dirty again. Like, you want to set goals or whatever to like clean, but like there's enough things that we like tear ourselves down for in this world that, not getting everything as clean as you'd like it. And again, that's more just based on experience, like with 2 kids and full-time jobs and stuff, sometimes we just have to let stuff not be clean for a little bit. Yep. Speaking of blinds though, I swear by these blinds, maybe we can get a sponsor. Look, check this out.
Oh,
Jen's parents used to have those.
Dude, they're the best. They're easy to clean. They don't really get dirty. Like, they are the best blinds I've ever had. They're amazing. You just push up and pull down. That's it.
We got HoofTube in the chat saying hard salt spots on the carpet. Use a razor to get out those. Okay, I like that hack. Rory's saying he just drinks lattes and it all comes together. Hey, that's pretty good advice there, bud.
I'm with Rory. That's what I'm doing.
There we go. I'll round this out with one more I have here that I learned a couple years ago. And I'll be honest, boys, like when you're a guy in your young 20s, like sometimes, it might be the diet. It might be the Bush lattes, as Rory's saying. It might be the Chipotle, whatever. Sometimes you just take massive dumps. And no matter.
I thought that's where we were going.
Yeah. And, no matter how much you try to clean that toilet bowl with your toilet bowl cleaner, your scrub brush, it just doesn't always come out. But there is a little bit of a hack I have tried, and it does work. Take a little bit of Coca-Cola. Pour that down that bowl, give it a couple seconds, let it sit. It can be flat Coke too. So if it's even Coke that goes bad in the fridge, put that in your toilet bowl, give it a little scrub. I don't know what's in that shit. It's not cocaine like it was in the past days, but it's something that those toilet bowls don't like, and it cleans them right up for you.
It's disheartening that something that is really good at getting like toilet scum is Coca-Cola that we drink through our mouths.
Yeah, absolutely. Kyle, you ever test this one out?
Yeah, not on a toilet, but on like a corroded part of the battery. On like
Yes.
a battery.
Oh, okay.
Yes, if your battery ports are corroded in your car, pour some Coke on them. It'll clear all that corrosion out, and your car will start again.
And make sure to drink some of that Coke too when you're done.
Yeah, of course.
There we go. Well, guys, I appreciate you guys being here with me tonight. I appreciate the chat. If you guys are new to the channel, please subscribe. We got so much fun stuff for you. We also have that Keyshawn Nixon helmet giveaway. Get in that as well. Look in the chat of this video. It will tell you how to get involved with that. We will be back next Tuesday with a lot more fun stuff. So subscribe, and we'll see you soon. Until then, keep it in between.